Ryan Wilson from CBS Sports put out a mock draft a few days ago. It had the Texans taking CJ Stroud after the Panthers took Bryce Young. Look, those two are flip-flopping back and forth. That's not a lot of news. There was a somewhat unique choice at number 12 where Ryan Wilson had the Texans take Lukas Van Ness, edge rusher out of Iowa, where he was a backup. But it's not that big a deal. That's what Iowa does things. They like to keep it traditional there in Iowa and let the upperclassmen start. Well, a redshirt sophomore like Van Ness, who is a big hulking brute of a man with 11-inch hands. That's just 1/8 of an inch shy of the size of J.J. Watt's hands. And brace yourself. He's a white defensive end. You're going to hear a lot of comparisons here and there to J.J. Watt. And I'm going to show you later on. I don't necessarily think there's a whole lot of merit to that, although I am excited about certain elements of Lukas Van Ness's game, particularly stuff like this. I want you to watch this. Peter Skoronski is an offensive tackle out of Northwestern. Probably in this mock draft, he goes one spot before Lukas Van Ness. Lukas Van Ness in this play is going to show you what people rave about with him is his power off the edge, his speed to power. Ran a very fast 40, and then he turns it into this. This is something Skoronski does a lot, by the way. He gives up his chest. He's got short arms to begin with. Honestly, he could have 11-foot long arms, and it doesn't matter when you just watch this. He gives up his chest. And Van Ness gets to come in like a kamikaze onto an aircraft deck and just bam. It's not always just power on the edge, although there is a heavy dose of it. And it gets him into trouble sometimes. This is not one of those times. You can see he has a bull rush going, converts it back underneath, has a nice play there. His speed shows up in the form of a couple of blocked kicks. It's not something all that common amongst defensive ends. Here he's at the top of the screen. Just wanted to show you that he does do a very good job versus the run. And this is where he does show functional strength. Against the run, you can see he has very good hand placement. The tight end stood up, uses active hands back to the inside. He's played on the inside a whole bunch, especially a couple years ago. And he's got very active hands when he's on the inside. Here against the run, not actually perfectly gap sound there, but it doesn't matter when you just destroy the guy in front of you. Here he is as a pass rusher. He's the left defensive tackle. The offensive right guard is about to get just absolutely worked by him. And you can see very active hands, and you're going to see another really good bull rush here. So this is against Paris Johnson, offensive tackle out of Ohio State, probably going to go in the first round himself. This is a big, strong dude. This is not somebody who's easily overpowered. But watch as you see Lukas Van Ness get upfield, and then again with very, very, very good hand placement. That's not as common as you might think amongst college defensive linemen. He does a great job of it. This is where I question somewhat just how strong Van Ness is. There are times when offensive linemen jump set him, when they just reach out and snatch him, he gets kind of caught up and stuck on the line of scrimmage. Now, sometimes that's because there's a run read and you don't get a great pass rush start, a pass rush to begin with. But this is something that happens not all that infrequently. But then again, he offsets it with that rush on the edge. But this is something I want you to look at. These are called spider charts, and I don't want it to be too confusing. It shouldn't be. On the left, this is J.J. Watt's spider chart, and you can see. You look 96th percentile for bench press, 78th percentile for height, 93rd percentile for weight, little shorter arms in the 66th percentile for one gap defensive ends. These are spider charts for one gap defensive ends. Hand size, ridiculously big for JJ. 40-yard dash, vertical, broad jump, 3-cone drill, 20-yard shuttle, all those things for short area explosiveness by defensive linemen. JJ is very good with that. If you look at the one on the right, this is Lukas Van Ness's, and man, there are some deficiencies here. And I wouldn't normally worry about bench press, but 17 reps on the bench press, which puts him in the 8th percentile. That's a weak number for a defensive lineman. Maybe he had an upper body injury or something. But if you just see around the board, not nearly as impressive of a physical specimen or an athlete as J.J. Watt. So these comparisons to J.J. Watt really are perhaps based on something other than just football skills. Can't imagine what that might be, but you look at the vertical, 24th percentile, 10-yard split, 50th percentile, broad jump, 63rd percentile. Those are things that measure explosiveness. Really good defensive linemen tend to be really good in both those things, and yet he's got a really fast 40. Defensive linemen typically don't need to run more than 10 yards, except for when they're chasing plays, but that's not what they get paid for. They get paid for sacks. I'll say another thing too. This is Lukas Van Ness. I got to be honest with you. Hair is a little bit too coiffed. You're going to be a white defensive lineman in this league your rookie year. You better look like a guy who's either a Marine recruit, perhaps somebody like an Army Ranger recruit, I would give there, or somebody who's done like 4 tours in Nam, but you're not quite there yet. I would be okay with this pick. I'm not going to be super, super stoked about it. I think in this mock draft, there were wide receivers available, either Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison. I think in Jigba Smith, Smith and Jigba, excuse me, we're all still available at this point. I would rather have one of those guys than some of these edge rushers who I think have potential, but I don't know if any of them other than the top 2 guys really deserve to go in the top 15. Still, if the Texans do draft Lukas Van Ness, there is a lot of upside to get excited about. He's just got further to go than what a lot of people would have you believe when they start making J.J. Watt comparisons.